The quiet town of Cedar Falls, Iowa was shaken to its core when 5-year-old Michael Thompson walked into the local police station holding his mother's hand and calmly announced that he had been murdered 78 years ago. What started as a mother's embarrassed attempt to humor her son's vivid imagination would become one of the most extraordinary cold case breakthroughs in criminal history. Michael had been having nightmares for months, waking up screaming about being shot in a dark alley by someone he called Uncle Frank. His mother, Lisa Thompson, initially dismissed these as typical childhood fears until the details became disturbingly specific. The boy would describe the smell of cigarettes in rain, the feeling of cold pavement against his back, and the sound of footsteps walking away as his life ebbed away. The breaking point came when Michael began providing names, dates, and locations with startling precision. He insisted his real name was James Mitchell, that he had lived on Elm Street in 1947, and that he had been killed behind Morrison's General Store on a rainy Tuesday night in October. The 5-year-old spoke with a maturity and certainty that unnerved his mother and made her question everything she thought she knew about her son. Lisa's initial reaction was to seek psychological help for what she assumed were trauma-induced fantasies, perhaps triggered by something Michael had seen on television or overheard in conversation. However, when she contacted local child psychologists, she was surprised to find that several professionals in the area had dealt with similar cases and suggested she document Michael's statements carefully before dismissing them. Dr. Patricia Williams, a child psychologist specializing in unusual cases, agreed to evaluate Michael after Lisa described the specificity and consistency of his claims. During their first session, Michael calmly drew a detailed map of downtown Cedar Falls as it had existed decades before his birth, accurately placing buildings that had been demolished or moved long before he was born. The drawing included Morrison's General Store in its exact historical location, complete with the narrow alley behind it where Michael claimed he had been murdered. Dr. Williams was stunned by the accuracy of the child's architectural knowledge and his ability to describe the layout of streets that had been significantly altered by urban development over the decades. Michael's descriptions went beyond geography to include intimate details of daily life in 1947. He spoke about rationing cards left over from the war, the sound of radio programs that had been popular during that era, and the specific brands of cigarettes and beer that were common in local establishments. The 5-year-old's knowledge of historical details that weren't taught in schools or commonly discussed was both impressive and deeply unsettling. Dr. Williams decided to contact Detective Sarah Rodriguez of the Cedar Falls Police Department, knowing that the officer had experience with cold cases and might be able to verify some of Michael's historical claims. Detective Rodriguez was initially skeptical, but Dr. Williams's reputation and the specificity of the child's statements convinced her to investigate further. The police department's archives contained records dating back to the 1940s, though many were stored in basement files that hadn't been accessed in decades. Detective Rodriguez spent hours searching through dusty boxes of case files, looking for any mention of a James Mitchell or a murder behind Morrison's General Store in October 1947. What she found sent chills down her spine. Case file, number 47-1029. Documented the unsolved murder of James Mitchell, age 28, found shot twice in the chest behind Morrison's General Store on the night of October 15, 1947. The victim had been discovered by the store owner the following morning, lying in the exact location that 5-year-old Michael had described with precise accuracy. The original police report included details that perfectly matched Michael's descriptions. James Mitchell had been found during a light rain. There were cigarette butts near the body, and the victim had defensive wounds suggesting he had known his attacker. The case had gone cold after several months of investigation, with no arrests ever made. Detective Rodriguez brought the case file to Dr. Williams and Lisa Thompson, requesting permission to interview Michael about the murder. The child's immediate recognition of James Mitchell's photograph from the 1947 police file was both confirmation and revelation. Michael looked at the black and white image and said quietly, "That's me when I was big." The interview that followed would challenge everything the adults thought they understood about memory, identity, and the nature of consciousness itself. Michael described the night of the murder with harrowing detail, speaking in a voice that seemed far too mature for his young age. He explained that James Mitchell had been lured to the alley by someone he trusted, someone he had called Uncle Frank, though they weren't actually related. According to Michael's account, Uncle Frank had been involved in illegal gambling operations that James Mitchell had discovered and threatened to report to the police. The meeting behind Morrison's general store was supposed to be a discussion about keeping quiet, but Uncle Frank had decided that murder was a safer solution than negotiation. The child described the conversation that preceded the shooting, including specific dialogue and details about Uncle Frank's nervous habits and distinctive clothing. Michael spoke about the fear and betrayal James Mitchell had felt when he realized his friend intended to kill him, and the physical sensations of being shot and dying on the cold, wet pavement. Detective Rodriguez was amazed by the consistency and detail of Michael's account, but she needed more than the word of a 5-year-old to reopen a 78-year-old murder case. She began investigating the historical accuracy of the child's claims, starting with city records from 1947 and police files related to illegal gambling during that period. The investigation revealed that there had indeed been a gambling operation running in Cedar Falls during the late 1940s, with several local businessmen under suspicion but never charged due to lack of evidence. Cross-referencing the names mentioned in gambling investigations with Michael's description of Uncle Frank, Detective Rodriguez identified Frank Sullivan, a local businessman who had died in 1952. Frank Sullivan's police file painted a picture of a man involved in various illegal activities, including gambling, bootlegging, and suspected connections to organized crime figures from Chicago. He had been questioned in connection with James Mitchell's murder, but had provided an alibi that couldn't be definitively proven or disproven at the time. Michael's description of Frank Sullivan was remarkably accurate when compared to police photographs and witness descriptions from the 1940s. The child mentioned Sullivan's habit of chewing toothpicks, his preference for wearing suspenders, and a distinctive scar on his left hand from a childhood accident. These details were confirmed by police records and interviews with Sullivan's surviving relatives. The breakthrough came when Detective Rodriguez discovered that Frank Sullivan had confessed to the murder on his deathbed in 1952, but the confession had been dismissed by police as the ravings of a dying man suffering from fever and medication. The original investigating officers had filed the confession but never followed up on it, considering the case effectively closed with Sullivan's death. Sullivan's deathbed confession matched Michael's account of the murder in every significant detail. He had admitted to luring James Mitchell to the alley under false pretenses, shooting him twice when Mitchell refused to stay quiet about the gambling operation, and leaving the body to be discovered the next morning. The confession even included details about the weather and the specific time of the murder that aligned perfectly with Michael's memories. Dr. Williams arranged for additional interviews with Michael, this time including a forensic psychologist and a criminal investigator who specialized in cold cases. The child's ability to provide accurate details about the crime scene, the victim's life, and the perpetrator's identity continued to astound the professionals involved in the case. Michael described James Mitchell's daily routine, his job at the local grain elevator, his relationship with his girlfriend Mary, and his plans to propose marriage before his death. Research into historical records confirmed each of these details, painting a picture of a young man whose life had been cut short just as he was beginning to build a future. The emotional impact of these revelations on Michael was profound. Despite his young age, he seemed to carry the weight of James Mitchell's unfulfilled dreams and unfinished business. The child spoke about Mary with deep affection and regret, mentioning that he had planned to marry her and start a family. Historical records showed that Mary had indeed waited for James to propose and had never married after his death. Detective Rodriguez was able to locate Mary, now 95 years old and living in a nursing home in a neighboring town. The meeting between Mary and Michael was arranged with careful preparation and psychological support, as the emotional implications for both participants were enormous. Mary's reaction to meeting Michael was immediate and powerful. Despite his young age and obvious physical differences from James Mitchell, she recognized something familiar in the child's eyes and mannerisms. When Michael spoke about their shared memories and expressed regret for not being able to marry her, Mary was moved to tears. The elderly woman confirmed additional details that Michael provided about their relationship, including private conversations they had shared and plans they had made together. Michael's knowledge of intimate moments and personal jokes that only James and Mary could have known provided additional evidence for the authenticity of his past life memories. Michael also provided information that helped Detective Rodriguez understand the broader context of the murder. He described the gambling operation in detail, naming other participants and explaining the financial pressures that had motivated Frank Sullivan's decision to commit murder. Some of these details led to the discovery of additional evidence in archived police files. The case attracted attention from researchers studying reincarnation and past life memories. Dr. Michael Chen, a psychiatrist who had investigated similar cases, joined the team evaluating Michael's claims. His analysis found patterns consistent with verified cases of past life recall, including the child's emotional responses and the specificity of his historical knowledge. The investigation also revealed the personal toll that James Mitchell's unsolved murder had taken on his family and friends. His sister had died in 1963, still grieving for her brother and frustrated by the lack of justice for his death. Learning that the case had been solved, even posthumously, provided a sense of closure for surviving family members. Michael's case was documented extensively, with video recordings of his interviews, copies of historical documents, and expert testimonies from various professionals. The evidence created one of the most comprehensive records of apparent past life recall ever assembled, challenging skeptics to explain how a 5-year-old could possess such detailed knowledge of a decades-old murder. The psychological support for Michael became a priority as the investigation progressed. Dr. Williams worked with the child to help him process the traumatic memories while maintaining his sense of identity as a 5-year-old boy. The integration of past life memories with present life development required careful management to ensure Michael's emotional well-being. The case also had a profound impact on the professionals involved. Detective Rodriguez found her worldview expanded by the experience, leading her to approach other cold cases with greater openness to unconventional sources of information. Dr. Williams incorporated past life therapy techniques into her practice, helping other children who reported similar experiences. The legal implications of the case were complex, as Frank Sullivan had been dead for 70 years and there were no living suspects to prosecute. However, the Cedar Falls Police Department officially closed the James Mitchell murder case, citing new evidence that identified Frank Sullivan as the perpetrator based on information provided by Michael Thompson. The story of Michael's past life memories provided healing for multiple parties affected by the original crime. Mary found peace in knowing that James Mitchell's spirit had found a way to communicate the truth about his death and express his continued love for her. The Mitchell family descendants gained closure about their ancestors' unsolved murder. Michael's own development continued under careful observation by child psychologists and past life researchers. As he grew older, his memories of being James Mitchell gradually faded, allowing him to focus on his current life while retaining some awareness of his previous existence. The integration process was managed carefully to preserve his mental health and normal childhood development. The case set precedents for how law enforcement might handle claims of past life memories in criminal investigations, while maintaining healthy skepticism. Some police departments began training officers to recognize when such claims might provide legitimate investigative leads, especially in cold cases where conventional methods had been exhausted. Michael's story was eventually featured in academic journals and conferences focused on consciousness research and criminal justice. The case provided compelling evidence for the survival of consciousness after death and demonstrated how past life memories might serve practical purposes in solving real-world problems. The long-term impact of the case extended beyond its immediate participants to influence research into consciousness, memory, and the nature of personal identity. Michael's accurate recollections of James Mitchell's life and death challenged materialist assumptions about the brain-based nature of memory and opened new avenues for scientific investigation. Years later, Michael grew into a well-adjusted teenager with only vague recollections of his past life memories. However, the documented evidence of his childhood claims remained as a testament to one of the most extraordinary criminal investigations in modern history, where a 5-year-old boy solved his own murder from a previous lifetime. The case of Michael Thompson and James Mitchell continues to inspire research into the mysteries of consciousness and memory, while providing hope that justice can transcend even death itself. Their story demonstrates that some connections between lives are so strong that they can reach across decades to ensure that truth and closure ultimately prevail. If this incredible story of a 5-year-old solving his own murder from a past life has opened your mind to the mysteries of consciousness and the possibility that justice transcends death itself, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing cases that challenge everything we think we know about life, death, and the power of memory to bridge impossible gaps in time.